there may just be a silver lining to Joe Burrow's injury happening so early in the season. So in this video, let's inject some optimism into this situation. Hi again, Bengals fans. John Sheeran of A to Z Sports Cincinnati here, and here we are. It's week 3 of the NFL season, and Jake Browning is the Bengals starting quarterback. For probably over 20 NFL teams around the league, if this exact scenario were to happen for them, where their starting quarterback, their top 10, top 5 quarterback is out for a minimum 3 months, this is probably just DEFCON 5 and the season's pretty much over. Of course, there aren't 20 or so teams with a top 5 quarterback, so this scenario realistically should tank the Bengals. And yet, that doesn't seem to be the vibe within the Bengals locker room, and really with a lot of people talking about the Bengals right now. And it's all because of what Browning did almost 2 years ago. And before I get into the details, I want to say that what he did that season was impressive. In the 7 games that he started for an injured Burrow, he won 4 of them. He completed 70.4% of his passes, which led the league among qualifying passers. He averaged 8 yards per attempt, and he had 2 fourth-quarter comebacks. That is really impressive work from a backup quarterback being thrown into the fire like that. And he wasn't just thrown into the fire there. He was thrown into the fire in the middle of November. At that point, he had been settled into his routine as the backup quarterback, sitting on the bench every single Wednesday, watching Burrow play. And for him to follow his first career start, which was abysmal against the Steelers, with back-to-back-to-back wins against the Jags, Colts, and of course the Vikings, in which he got his revenge game against his former team, that was mightily impressive because he did it so late in the year, long after he had any meaningful reps in the preseason. So compare that to now when it's week 3 and we're just 3 weeks removed from when he was last playing in a preseason game. And of course the time span is even shorter because he was just on the field last Sunday. And I was curious if Browning actually felt this way, and it turns out he does. He said in Wednesday's press conference, I think it's a little bit different getting thrown in week 3 versus I think that was like week 11. So I'm a little bit closer to when I was actually last live versus getting thrown in week 11. So the Bengals are not only getting a more experienced Jake Browning now because he has started 7 games under his belt from a year and a half ago, but they're also getting a fresher version of Jake Browning, who's again only a few weeks removed from actual live action. Just logically speaking, the life of a backup quarterback, if everything goes right, is that you spend the entire offseason behind the starter who gets the vast majority of reps. Yes, you practice with the 2s here and there, but for the most part, it's about getting the starter ready. And then you have a month in August to play the majority of action in 3 preseason games. And then as soon as the preseason ends, again, if everything goes as planned, you don't see the field for any significant snaps. And that cycle repeats itself over and over and over again until you run into this exact scenario. The thought of an icing period for any backup, nonetheless a quarterback, is very interesting and honestly not something I really think about that often. But there might be some weight to having Browning take over 8 weeks earlier compared to the last time he did. Of course, the only way we're going to see if this actually matters is how consistent can he actually be as the starter for multiple weeks. Because again, he rattled off 3 really nice games in 2023, but the wheels completely fell off against the Steelers and the Chiefs in 2 must-win games. It should be expected the teams aren't going to take that long to figure out who Jake Browning is and limit him to some capacity. But Browning is now going to get a much longer slate of opportunities to string together some consistency. And maybe, just maybe, doing this at the start of the season, closer to the end of the preseason, may actually work out in his favor. I'll admit it, there's not a lot of optimism right now when you have your starting franchise quarterback on the mend for 3 months. But anything, and I mean anything, that can instill confidence in Jake Browning taking over for the time being, that's definitely a plus the Bengals have to run with.